and welcome. My name is Annalisa, and today I'm doing a wrap-up of what I read for Feminist Lit Feb, which was almost 2 months ago now. So I didn't actually know about Feminist Lit Feb until I had already lined up my TBR for the last half of February. What actually prompted me to read all these books was that I kept getting these recommendations for feminist theory books and stories about great feminists, and I kept looking them up to get them from my library, but my library didn't have any of them. So what I decided to do was to just search feminism in my library and just get whatever I saw there that looked good. So I ended up with a ridiculously long TBR, which I'll see if I can pull a picture of to show. So I just got probably 18 books from the library that were on feminist topics, and I was just going to gradually hack away at them. And then, maybe a couple of days after I had gotten all these books, I actually heard of Feminist Lit Feb. And then I decided, this is perfect. This is a reading event I can actually take part in because I'm actually interested in it, and I'm actually feeling like reading that particular thing at this moment because I did it by myself. That's why I began attempting to read these very many books in the 2 weeks that I had left, which I did not succeed with. I ran over time, and then at the end of the first week of March I had a house fire and all the library books in my house were destroyed, and at this point I really don't have the energy to go back and re-request all of them and get them all back. A fair number of these I do hope to go back to eventually and finish, just not right now. And I do want to talk about them because I have a lot of feelings about them right now. The first of these I read was How to Be Successful Without Hurting Men's Feelings by Sarah Cooper. This is a little square picture book type of a thing. It's kind of like a comic strip with each page being one panel. Comedic feminist theory thing, and it's basically satire, how to be successful without hurting men's feelings, and basically coming to the conclusion that it is impossible to do so in a very funny way. And I laughed a lot with that book, and it was also informative because I've never worked in an office setting. I've only heard about how things work in an office setting with sexism and such. I really want to buy that one for myself because it's a good sort of reference book that you can just go to, flip to any page for a giggle any time you want. Doesn't matter if you read it before. It's also good for sharing with other people. Then I continued with a very easy one, The Pink Hat by Andrew Joyner. And this is a children's illustrated book with maybe a line or two per page, and most of the illustration is in black and white, and the only color is from this pink hat that floats around from person to person and ends up being in the Women's March. The next one I started because I was really excited about it was Good and Mad by Rebecca Traister. I realized how much I enjoy angry feminists and angry feminist theory back in a little before October, I think, when I read The Witch Doesn't Burn in This One by Amanda Lovelace. It just feels like there's so much in feminist theory and on the internet where a lot of my feminist discussion happens. Well, I don't like to talk to people in person is the thing. There are feminists around me. I just don't like to talk to people in person. There just seems to be a lot of placating men and making sure we don't hurt their feelings when we're talking about how badly we've been hurt and all the bad things that have happened to us. We have to make sure that they don't feel like we're coming after them. That's just really upsetting when something really bad has happened and you feel like you have to make other people feel better who it didn't happen to, and who in some cases had the power to do something about it and didn't. That's very upsetting. So I really like angry feminist literature. So a lot of Good and Mad was written about and after and because of the 2016 election, and not just the results but how it went in general and how the candidates were treated. But there's also a lot of stuff about women in politics over the years, and so one of them was Elizabeth Warren. I can't remember the names now, but there were several other names that I recognized, and then when I looked them up, they were like, oh, that's a cool person. And various feminists who have fought in the courts and in the Senate and the House for women's rights and to be heard, but they haven't. And I actually started to read Good and Mad when I needed to go exercise. It actually got me to start doing my weightlifting again, which I had stopped because I'm tired and depressed. It gave me enough mojo to go do that. It was very helpful to read it when I was on my stationary bike, because then I could pick up the pace when I got angry without having to run around my house, which is the usual thing that I would do. But there were also encouraging parts about how when women were angry, they got things done. And I really appreciate that, because I have heard a lot of people say that when you're angry, you don't get things done. If you use your anger, you're not going to get things done. No one will listen. That's really not true. People listen to angry people a lot. That's why people who are nasty to customer service people and yell at them get their way even though they're wrong. People do listen to angry people. And if you happen to be both angry and right, that's actually on your side, not a detractor. So I love that book. I got about halfway through it before the fire happened. And the one that I would read in between readings of that book to kind of soothe me and be an encouraging thing was Pink Sari Revolution by Amana Fontanella Khan. From the way it's written and what I remember of the book at the time, was a investigative reporter sort of person who went to, she may have been Indian. It seemed like she was talking about India as someone who had researched it more than someone who had grown up there. I don't think that the author grew up there, but she heavily researched this particular area of India where the Pink Gang is kind of the only reliable law to be had, and she interviewed a bunch of members of the Pink Gang and their relatives and people like that, and got the down low on why the Pink Gang started, what they do, who they are, stuff like that. And so if you haven't heard of the Pink Gang, it is a bunch of Indian women who, when they work as a group, tend to dress in pink saris so that they kind of have a unified front, and they also tend to carry sticks, and they go around and whack corrupt policemen and various other people who are doing things they shouldn't. Basically take care of the people, both men and women, of this particular region of India. I'm not sure how wide exactly the Pink Gang had spread. I probably would have found out more if I'd had more of a chance to read the whole book, but it was just a bunch of stories about how women had banded together and had solved the problems or fought against the problems in their areas, even when the government wasn't on their side, when the government was corrupt and there were gangs that were bad guys. Even though women weren't given a lot of power in this society, they rose up and took it and banded together and accomplished things just on their own without having to get permission from anybody. So that was really, really wonderful, and I highly encourage you to read it if you would like to hear some uplifting and nice stories having to do with feminism instead of just all the time how bad things are. It's really nice to hear the positive. Oh, and I also fully read Women versus History by Anita Sarkeesian and Ebony Adams. I think that was 3 of these books I actually completed. How to Be Successful Without Hurting Men's Feelings, The Pink Hat, and Women versus History. And so Women versus History is where I got a lot of the info for my Women of History video. Now I can't even remember what I titled that. Anyway, I'll link it below. That's what inspired me to make that video, and then I found more stories in more places. It's all about women that had done things that we're told women in history never did. So thank you so much for watching. If you have thoughts on any of these books, if you've read any of them, or if you would like to read them now, I would love to hear about it in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!